to make you smile, or they will take your pain and give you so much joy. For me, I hope. For me, I hope, my baby. For me, I hope. For me, I hope. For me, I hope. For me, I hope, my baby. For me, I hope. For me, I hope.
Hello, happy Friday. How have you been? I hope you've had an awesome week. And so that was one of my very favorite songs. Anybody who knows me knows I love Chike's music. And this is one of my favorite songs on his Boo of the Booeless album, and it says beautiful people. That's the title. It just talks about the people that you come across in your life and all that they do. You should check it out. It's a really good song. I love it. So that's my music playlist for today. But how have you been? I hope you've had an amazing week. I hope everything that you've set out to do, you're able to cover some of it. And I hope you enjoyed yourself doing it, and living through the ups and downs of life. It's really hot today for some reason. ECG and Gridco have decided to torment us on this side of town with a never-ending power failure, and it's been on since 9 a.m. so it's really warm. I am also tired and sleepy. But of course, my commitment to you surpasses any other thing that is happening around me. And so I am here to have a conversation. So if you have not listened to my podcast ever, my name is Amma. Some call me Mommy, Tinkerbell, whichever one you call me, Doris. I respond to all of them. I'd like to say welcome. Thank you for joining me. And what are we going to talk about today? I want to talk about depression, right? Because usually when people go through trauma, there's a lot of sadness about the situation, and invariably, if they don't know how to heal, understand and process it, even when you're going through the healing process, you go through bouts of depression. And so do you feel the sadness? Do you feel the heaviness? You've lost interest in activities, socializing, being around people, or sometimes I believe it's not just the sadness. I believe that sometimes people are fiercely angry, especially when their emotions are downplayed. They burst out in fits of rage and anger because of the situation that they're in. And so I just want to address that today, right? So it's a mood disorder. That's what we'll call it. And the feelings are persistent. That's the difference. It's not like it's a touch and go thing. They're persistent. So let's say maybe from 50 to 100% of the time you feel that mood, and you are just loss of appetite, unintentional weight loss or gain, you sleep too much or you sleep too little, you are pacing up and down, you're easily irritated or irritable, or you're agitated half of the time. There's a lot of fatigue and loss of energy because it's draining. Your body is carrying a heavy load. And for some people, there's a loss of sexual desire or more of it, reduced interest in pleasurable activities that they once used to enjoy. So if they like working out, cooking, playing music, reading, learning, whatever thing that they seem to enjoy, they kind of just put it on the back burner and just ignore it. And then, of course, the major flag, the depressed mood, that will let you know that they are in that new mood. And then for the very difficult ones of feeling the worthlessness, the guilt, there's difficulty in thinking, clarity of thought, processing, concentrating, even making decisions become a problem. Going outside becomes a problem. They become very reclusive. And then for some people, there's recurrent deaths, thoughts of death and suicide, or even an attempt to commit suicide, right? So you realize that it becomes a big issue for a lot of people, and they don't know how to handle it. So what happens is they are lost, and it becomes as though no one is listening to them. And statistics let us know that depression is nearly twice as common among women as men. So women have a higher chance of being depressed than men. And anxiety, mood swings, fatigue, you find them ruminating, dwelling on negative thoughts all the time. And for women, they also deal with postpartum depression and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. That's a lot of stress that the woman's body goes through. So imagine dealing with abuse, dealing with postpartum depression, and then premenstrual dysphoric disorder as well. I mean, it's crazy. So you find that whilst women are going through this, their body is kind of overly sensitive to it, and they are not in a space to kind of understand that this is what their body needs, right? So it becomes a big problem, right? Now, in males, they avoid families, they avoid social situations, they don't even want to go out, they work without a break, they have difficulty keeping up with work and family responsibility, and they display abusive or controlling behaviors in relationships also. And so that's why when certain things happen, you need a therapist. I insist on therapy being a very important part of healing. Do the work, pray, read your Bible, do whatever you want to do, but please see a therapist. It is critical to your healing and coming out of this whole situation of abuse. So I think that to understand this situation, we have to make an effort in learning about what triggers it. All right. For students, there's a difficulty in concentrating on schoolwork, there's insomnia, there's sleeping too much, there's an increase or decrease in appetite, and then avoiding social situations. And for teens, they may withdraw from their friends and family, they may have difficulty in concentrating, they feel guilty, helpless, or worthless, and then they have a restlessness, and an inability to sit still. And then in children, of course, crying, low energy, clinging, defiant behavior, and vocal outburst. So it could be caused by a genetic problem. It could be caused by changes in the brain's neurotransmitter levels. So neuroscience of the brain, that's another whole topic altogether. I remember the first time that my therapist talked to me about it, I felt like I discovered a new playground. I'm a lifelong learner, so I believe in learning and reading a lot. And so when she spoke about neuroscience and the therapy and the idea behind it, and she was like, you would love it. And I actually do love it. So your brain has transmitters. I don't know if you're aware of that. And so when there are changes in your brain's neurotransmitter levels, and it feels some kind of, it perceives a threat and all of those things, they act in a certain manner, So it could be a change in an environment. It could be physiological or social factors. It could be additional conditions from a mental health or an existing mental health problem. recently we had a couple of people being vocal about their disorders, their mental health disorders, and talking very, very boldly about what they go through on the regular. So what you need to understand is that depression is treatable, right? So you need support from the people that are around you. You need to have conversations with them about how you're feeling. You need to be able to express yourself in a safe space where people will hold you room for you to be able to navigate the very difficult emotions that you're going through without judgment, without critique, without rushing you, without letting you feel that you're sick, right? Because it is a mood disorder. It's not an illness that is, going to break you down, but it has the possibility of getting worse when it comes to, like I said, attempted suicide and all of that, or suicide in itself. And so if not managed properly, the support or lack of it will make someone go to the extreme. There's a case of a mother who wrote on her Facebook wall about not being able to bear the heavy load of being a single parent. And so she drove her car, I don't know if it's a train or another car, and she ended up killing herself and another man who was a bystander, right? If you look at the signs on her Facebook wall and her social media posts, she was shouting loudly. Yes, even though people reached out to her, as much as social media makes you feel like there are people who are close to you, they're also far away from you. So you need a network of a very supportive group of people who will be there, hold your hand through this situation and guide you. Like I said, therapy, psychotherapy, also known as talking therapy. Some options include one-to-one counseling and then cognitive behavioral therapy. That's a CBT. That's another ballgame altogether. So it's a very scientific process, but it works, And so if you're going to go through it, it's important that you kind of understand what it means to go through it, and then you treat yourself accordingly, right? So some people prescribe antidepressants. I'm not sure I am big on it because medication in itself. So once it begins and you see it, please, the serotonin inhibitors, tricyclic antidepressants, atypical antidepressants, and all of those things. Those are things I don't want to go in because I'm not a doctor. But each of them acts on a different neurotransmitter in your brain or a combination of them. And so when the doctor gives you those medications, they work. So sometimes people are on medication and they stop taking it because they feel like, this is too much for me. And then they relapse and things begin to happen. And there are natural remedies also, right? People recommend chamomile, lavender, ginseng, and all of those things. And then take your supplements. Your food and diet is also important. Fruits, vegetables, fish, all the good things that your body needs. So psychotherapy is psychological or talking therapies for depression include interpersonal psychotherapy, problem-solving treatment. For some forms of depression, psychotherapy is usually the first line of treatment because typically when something is heavy and you're carrying a load, you just want to talk about it. While some people respond very well to it, others don't. Right? So you may go for CBT or to see a therapist or in groups over the phone, and it helps you to identify emotional problems that affect your relationship and communications, how these issues also affect your mood, how you can navigate them, how you can identify them, how you can change them to suit you so it doesn't affect how you react to these situations. So the externals that affect you in a way that you will kind of react in a manner that you shouldn't, or carry such a heavy load. So there are brain stimulation therapies also. That's another treatment option. And there can be major depression, there can be persistent depressive disorders, there can be bipolar, there can be psychotic depression, there can be postpartum depression. And so you can be sad. A sad disorder is related to reduction in daylight during the fall and winter. Some people just go into themselves, like during the rainy season, even when nothing's happening and they can't go out. So if you know and you feel heavy with these things, these symptoms, please seek professional help from a doctor or a mental health specialist. You are not crazy. So seeking therapy doesn't imply that there's something wrong with you. You are absolutely okay. You're whole as a human being. You bring value to yourself and to the people around you, and you deserve better. However, life has ups and downs, and sometimes the downs bring such a weight upon our shoulders that we slump under that weight, and then we kind of allow that weight to dictate to us in terms of our emotions and our feelings and our actions and our thoughts. So when that happens, all that you want is for the people that you love and care about, the support system, to lift you up. You need to talk to a professional so they can even help you. They know how to ask questions to sometimes get to the bottom or the root of the situation. And then, you then take those tools and go on with your life so that things like suicide can be prevented. Things like long-standing depression can be treated, and it's curable. So there are a lot of things that you can do that will prevent the depression from coming back. So some of the triggers, let me mention some of the triggers. Triggers are emotional, psychological, or physical even. The circumstances can cause a depression or symptoms to appear or return. So stressful life events like losing a loved one, conflicts, changes in relationships, family conflicts, conflicts among friends, conflicts among siblings, incomplete recovery. You've had a depressive episode prior to the new one. You were taking medication, or you were doing therapy or CBT, whichever one that you were going along with, and then you suddenly stopped because you felt better. Then it comes back because you didn't, kind of listen. And there are medical conditions such as obesity, heart diseases, diabetes, and all of that. Now, when you experience certain life events such as bereavement, work issues, change in relationship, financial problems, medical concerns, a news that is too heavy for you to bear, your business has gone under, COVID is ravaging. Even in the era that we're within, there's so much uncertainty within the world and all of those things. There's COVID, there's terrorism, there's robberies, there's so many things in Ghana. Like everything is daylight robberies going on. All those things, the information that you feed your brain with can cause you to be depressed. So for instance, I filter my news a whole lot. There are certain things that I won't read, I don't want to know, I will block it, so I will block it. Instagram has words that you don't want to read about, so I put them in my list and I type those words. I don't want to know about it, so I miss a lot of things. Bad news still is blown over or whatever, or someone mentions it to me. And when you have a lack of successful coping strategies, and that's where the therapist comes in. Sometimes there are things that are in your subconscious that because they've done this for so long, they're able to draw you to talk about it. A lot of people don't want to go to therapy because they don't see the point. But the people who've been to therapy shout about it the loudest because they understand and see the changes that is brought into their own lives and how it helps them to move on. So look, I'm an advocate for therapy. I will scream it every single day, and I will continue to pray because God is the source, the plug, even the wisdom to choose the right therapist comes from God. The wisdom to understand that what you need to do comes from God. So you do that hand in hand, but please see that therapist and continue with the prayer, okay? Don't do anything that will make the situation come back. And using prescription drugs, that beta blockers and all of that, it causes depressive episodes. Using recreational drugs, I don't even know why people drink certain things recreationally, because it kind of embarrasses you and it throws you off course. So anyway, that's another topic for another day. And then if you've sustained a head injury, been in an accident before, sometimes I remember my dad doing certain things, and in hindsight, maybe he needed a therapist because some of the things didn't make sense. So many stories, and when I think about it, they were really crazy. But I also know that my dad had 2 accidents, 2 very huge, one on peacekeeping in Egypt, or was it Lebanon, and he was run over by a whole armor truck. And he was in coma for months, and then he came back, he got better, carried on with his work. I wasn't born then, and then after he had me, I remember when I was in class 3, my dad used to go to Full Gospel, and they had a prayer meeting, and then we wake up in the morning and people are calling my mom. They called her on the landline, and they said my dad had been in an accident. I was young, but I was the oldest than my sister and I. And we go to the hospital, and my dad is just fully bodied up because he was dragged by a truck for about 800 meters, and he was crushed under the weight of the car, and he was in coma for 6 months. Because he was a retired army officer, they flew him to 37, and I hadn't seen my dad in over 6 months, and he had a head injury. I knew my mom was a nurse, so she explained everything to us, and all I knew was my dad, when he came, he looked okay, but there were certain things that he did that in hindsight I realized that he needed that therapy. But anyway, he's gone now. It's been a year. I miss him sometimes, and I would love to ask him certain questions, but he's gone. That's it. And so that's why I am big on therapy, because I've seen firsthand what the lack of it can do and the rippling effects of it. So yes, having sustained a head injury, please, you need to be careful, because it can bring on depressive episodes that will make you do things that are out of character. And so having chronic diseases also is part of the problem. So I will say that all in all, depression is the symptoms of it. I've talked about the symptoms of it. I've talked about the causes. I've talked about everything that can make you. And a lot of the time, people think that people should be sad. Like when people have diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, asthma, arthritis, obesity, diabetes, like it comes with a lot of weight, and so they get depressed, and people are not supportive. And they do so many things. People living with sickle cell, people living with chronic lifelong diseases, so you feel out of the blue, and anger, aggressiveness, irritability, anxiousness, restlessness. You feel empty, sad, hopeless. Behavior such as loss of interest, no longer finding pleasure in favorite activities, feeling tired. Some people drink excessively, use drugs, engage in high-risk activities, inability to concentrate, difficulty in completing tasks for the cognitive side of things, sleep patterns, insomnia, restlessness, excessive sleepiness, not sleeping through the night, physical well-being such as fatigue, headache, digestive problems, that's also another big one, and mood such as irritability, feeling sad or empty, period cramps, increase in period cramps. That's also a thing, you know. So there are so many things: family history, early childhood trauma, brain structure, medical conditions, and drug use. So there are things that can point you to why the depression is happening. But the early childhood trauma, for instance, what is it in the childhood that you need to unlock? So that's why I am an advocate for therapy. You know, and if you use a substance, the possibility that you'll be depressed is high. So your moods, your appetite, your sleep pattern, your activity level, your thoughts are very important in kind of addressing the issue of depression. So it's important for us to kind of support people who are going through this and let them know that they are not alone. You know, they are not alone. So people getting panic attacks, social isolation, thoughts of suicide, self-harm, all of those things are things that happen. And so we ought to learn and understand these things. This is why I do the podcasts, because it's important to me, you know. So speaking with her can help you learn your coping mechanisms. So if you're able to identify it, then you know that, okay, this is what the issue is, this is what the problem is. And long feeling of sadness and changes in appetites, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, loss of energy, increased fatigue, difficulty thinking or concentrating, thoughts of death or suicide, feeling that's the extreme, feeling worthless or guilty, and all of those things are not normal, right? And so depression is different from sadness or grief or bereavement. So let's make that clear. In grief, there are painful feelings and it comes in waves and is often intermixed with positive memories of the person who's passed. But in major depression mode, there are decreases for weeks and weeks, and in grief, self-esteem is always usually maintained. But in grief, feelings of worthlessness and self-loathing are common. So you loathe the feeling that you have, you're angry at yourself and all of that. And so now bear in mind also that grief and depression can coexist for some people. You know, so that's why I said the death of a loved one can trigger the depression, right? So there are risk factors for depression and all of that. Genetics, environments, and we talked about the treatment, the medication, the psychotherapy, everything. So some people get angry and burst of anger and all of those things. And so it's important that we support them and we let them know that they are loved, they are cared for. If you're the one sometimes going through those episodes, please pray, get a therapist, and go through the treatment. Don't abandon it halfway thinking that you're okay. Learn all the coping mechanisms that you need to learn, and then use those tools to make yourself, to dig yourself out of it. Identify a support group of people who will not judge, who will not criticize, who will not push you further down a myriad of more depressive episodes, but will help you to come out of it. So like I said, find the beautiful people in your life. That's why I played this song, so that when these things happen, you can kind of sail through. So I want to say I love you. Until next week, take care of yourself. Love yourself. Love upon yourself so much that, you enjoy the processes of everything that you need to do. And we'll take another episode next week. Until then, I leave you with Bull of the Bullless. And this is Beautiful People by Chike. Go listen to this song. I know that you will love it, and Take care of yourself. See you next week. I am out. As always, it's been Tinkerbell, MFR, Mommy, Doris, whichever name you call me. I love you and thank you for joining me on today's episode. Much love.